Well, hey, everybody, this is Heidi St. John, and I am coming to you from the studios at Firmly Planted Family with a little bit of post-debate analysis. I'm going to show you some videos and sort of give you what I think might be the defining moment of the debate. This is the Heidi St. John podcast. Stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. So before we get going today, thanks to Tuvu, who is the sponsor of this podcast. You guys know that I am always looking for better social media options, and Tuvu is offering it. And the first 500 people to sign up are going to get 6 months for free. Check it out at tuvu.com/Heidi. All right, you guys, some of you watched my debate analysis and sort of tweeting and Facebooking about the debate as it went along. And I got to tell you, that was probably one of the worst presidential debates I have ever seen. It was excruciating to watch. It was disgusting to see the absolute bias that was on display from ABC News and from the moderators who were anything but moderating. They were absolutely working as shills for the Harris campaign. David Muir and Lindsey Davis were a disgrace to the profession tonight. And I thought maybe instead of starting at the very beginning, I would start at the very end. I know that a lot of you didn't make it to the end of the debate. I frankly don't blame you at all. But I watched it all the way to the end, and this was Trump's closing statement, probably the best statement that he made in the entire thing, because by this time he had a chance to sort of get his sea legs and realize, oh, hey, this isn't Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris. This is Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris, David Muir, and Lindsey Davis. And so this was his closing statement. Let me play it for you, and then I'll give you my thoughts.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
President Trump.
All right, so that is how Trump ended his debate. And actually, he was right. And you guys, we need to be honest about a couple of things because I'm going to give you a little bit of debate analysis here. Trump is not good at playing political theater. He just isn't. He's way too raw. He's way too real. And it was obvious to me within just a few minutes that the people that were moderating this debate were anything but impartial. This was an absolute ambush, and it probably took Trump about 35 seconds to figure it out because that's how long it took the rest of us. It was disgusting to me to see what happened to fair journalism and to the impartiality that is supposed to be afforded to the candidates when they hit the debate stage. And so I was tweeting about this like a lot of you guys, probably watching what was happening like I was, and watching in real time was painful. They started up by talking about the economy economy, and then they moved on to talking about abortion. I'll get to that in just a second. But Kamala Harris was pressed on whether or not she thought that the economy, that they were better off under this economy or under Trump's economy. And I thought it was super interesting. She never really answered the question. Listen to what she had to say.
Often asks his supporters, are you better off than you were 4 years ago? When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American
Kamala.
people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy. My opponent, on the other hand, his plan is to do what he has done before, which is to provide a tax cut for billionaires and big corporations, which will result in $5 trillion to America's deficit. My opponent has a plan that I call the Trump's sales tax, which would be a 20% tax.
Okay, there's so much wrong with what she's saying. It's ridiculous. First of all, have you noticed that she hasn't yet answered the question? She has not yet said, oh, hey, we are better off or we're not better off, because we all know that the answer to that question is we are far worse off now than we were 3.5 years ago. The economy's in the toilet. There's only one person on the street that I live on that's openly supporting Kamala Harris for president, and this is what the sign says in his front yard. It says Harris Walls, because we're not going back. And I just wanted to go, not going back to what? Are we not going back to secure borders? Are we not going back to lower inflation? Are we not going back to free speech in this country? What are we not going back to exactly? Because what these guys have done has absolutely derailed the economy in the United States. And you know what? You can blame the Republicans and the Democrats for the skyrocketing national debt, because every time we've had a Republican in there, the debt has gotten worse. We've got to have people in the White House and in our houses of Congress who actually want to do something about the crippling debt that is going to be a huge problem for my grandchildren. But nobody talked about that. And not once did Harris ever take responsibility for what's happening in the economy. She basically, she went on to blame it, of course, on Trump, because everyone knows it's Trump's fault. And it was interesting so they asked her this question directly: are the American people better off now than they were 4 years ago? And she couldn't say yes, because the answer is no. And that's the reason she couldn't say yes. Otherwise, she just have been like, oh, yeah, let me give you all the great numbers. Let me tell you about unemployment. Let me tell you about how much cheaper gasoline is now and how much better and easier it is for people to go and buy a gallon of milk or a dozen eggs. No, she knows that it's not better than it was. The American people are far worse off today because of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden's policies. And actually, the Democrats have been in charge of this country for the vast majority of the last 20 years. And here we are. Why in heaven's name will we give these guys another run at it when we're so close right now to the tipping point in this country, both economically and politically and spiritually and geopolitically? It's insane. I think it's interesting that Rick Green, my friend from Patriot Academy, weighed in on this. This is what he said. He said, let's face it, Trump is lousy at playing fake American politics and theatrics, but he's great at actually getting things done for America. Harris is extremely lousy at getting things done, but great at playing the politician fake theatrics. I was genuinely amazed at her ability to criticize quote, belittling and name calling while actually belittling and name calling. Everyone needs to keep in mind the reality of what's happening on the ground in America right now, not the fake Capitol from Hunger Games type Orwellian image that we were fed in this debate. The musical is over. Go back to work registering voters, chasing ballots, and turning out the vote. I could not agree more with my friend Rick Green. Tonight's debate was an absolute disaster on about every front. And I was telling Melissa, because our team was here late watching the debate and kind of just trying to soak it in and sort of figure out what the heck was going on. And it was a nightmare. When she was asked if she would get rid of private health insurance, some of you might remember this, the moderators, by the way, could have corrected her, but they didn't. They spent a lot of time correcting Trump and actually condescending to him and talking down to him. We'll talk about that in just a second. But they asked her about private health insurance. She said she would absolutely not get rid of private health insurance. And, Trump very honestly said, I don't have a plan. Why? Because it's a nightmare to try to figure out how to fold healthcare into the American economy. Our economy was never made to support the health insurance and the health needs of the American people. It was just never made for that. And right now, we've got crippling debt, massive problems at the border, fentanyl pouring across our southern border, abortion on demand in so many states across the country. We're going to get to that more in a second. We got big fish to fry. And Donald Trump doesn't have a plan to get us into the healthcare business because that was never supposed to be the role of the federal government. As Kamala would say, let's be clear. But this is interesting. And do you guys get it yet? Because if you weren't watching, you really need to watch this. It's fascinating, fascinating stuff. So I want you to check this out. Harris actually co-sponsored Bernie Sanders' single-payer bill. This is from Forbes magazine. In 2017, Harris was the first senator to co-sponsor Bernie Sanders' bill, the Medicare for All Act, or single-payer health care, in 2017. Here, I'll break some news, she said that year at a town hall in Oakland, California, which, by the way, has been ruined. It's absolutely rotting. Go look at images from Oakland, California right now. Everything that Kamala Harris touches turns to garbage. She said, I intend to co-sponsor the Medicare for All bill because it's just the right thing to do. 15 other Democrats eventually joined her. That bill, if enacted, would have abolished private health insurance for all age groups, including Medicare beneficiaries, and replaced it with a government-run single-payer system to benefit, quote, every individual who's a resident of the United States, including undocumented immigrants. Bernie Sanders has popularized the term Medicare for All, a U.S. version of single-payer government-run health insurance program, I will add, that would bankrupt the country. And if you want single payer, then just go to Canada and talk to my friends there about how well that's working for them. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous notion that we think that somehow the government is responsible for health insurance for its people. We have absolutely forgotten what it is that we're supposed to be doing in this country. And it really is a shame. When they were talking about the issue of abortion, this was one of the things I think that just really, for lack of a better word, it's agonizing to watch. And President Trump, who I've said before is a sloppy pro-lifer, but he's a pro-lifer who's just being hammered by the evangelicals on the left, or on the right rather, and he's being hammered by the hard left and the pro-abortion nut jobs in this country who would like abortion up to the moment of birth. And he talked about a conversation that took place in the news. We all heard about this several years ago that said babies were actually, they're discussing after the baby is born what to do with the baby. And immediately, Lindsay Davis, who apparently is running for something. I mean, I don't know, you guys. I didn't know she was running, but apparently she is. And she felt the need to jump into the actual debate and was condescending to President Trump more than one time. It was sickening to watch. I'll never watch ABC News again as long as I live. I don't watch it now, but I'll probably never watch it in the future. But listen to what she had to say when President Trump got done talking about abortion and why he thinks that the left is so radical in their position on abortion and so disgusting in how they view life. And he talked about infanticide, and then Lindsay Davis felt the need to correct him. Listen to what she had to say.
injustices.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
Well, as I
Okay,
said,
so we just saw the moderator chastise President Trump and say that there was no time when that was ever possible. That's not the way it goes. But Tim Walz's state allows babies born alive after botched abortions to be left to die. And here is that from the Daily Signal. Under Governor Tim Walz, babies born alive in botched abortions were left to die. Then he removed reporting requirements. So Trump rightly is pointing out that this is an actual discussion that's happening in this country. But the moderator, Lindsay, she was actually lying when she said that no state allows you to kill your baby after birth. Tim Walz's state does it. And so, no one stopped him. No one fact checked the moderators and said the moderators were condescending and rude to President Trump. It was painful to watch from beginning to end. In fact, there was one point in which I was just like, "Oh my word, you guys, put us all out of our misery. This is too much. Nobody's enjoying this." It was hard to watch, and it was really, when he was asked about January 6th, which of course is a big thing, and Kamala Harris did everything but start crying on the stage about how terrible it was. It was just so awful. And Donald Trump was like, "Dude, I didn't actually incite any violence. In fact, I said the opposite was true." And then David Muir corrected him and tried to remind him that he did bear responsibility. And does he feel bad about that? As if David Muir were his mother or his father and he was trying to correct him. And I found the tweet from Donald Trump from January 6th, and this is what he said. He said, "I am asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. Remember, we are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you." That is what President Trump said. And yet the dishonest, disgusting, biased mainstream media is still spouting lies from years ago. And it's really, I mean, it's embarrassing. Bill O'Reilly said ABC questions were skewed to the left, which is absolutely true. Abortion, climate change, January 6th, the election, Obamacare, no inflation stats, no border stats, no comments on social disorder, no comments on the massive drug crisis, the fentanyl crisis we've got going on in our country right now. The questions were very confrontational to Trump. This debate was nothing more than an ambush. And I thought it was interesting, and this is when it gets back to the only time they really did ask Kamala a question that she could have sort of messed up. I wonder, honestly, you guys, I wonder if they gave her the questions in advance. Because it seemed to me like she was absolutely ready for them. They threw her mostly softballs. But when she was asked about Afghanistan, which of course, remember, she said she was the last person in the room. She was 100% responsible for the disaster that was the Biden pullout of Afghanistan. They said, "Do you still support that withdrawal from Afghanistan?" She said, "Absolutely, I do." And Mike Pompeo tweeted this. He said, "Let's be clear. When Kamala says she executed the Trump plan for her Afghanistan withdrawal, she is lying. She's lying. It's that simple." Kamala Harris says, "We're not taking guns away. The truth is, she is literally on camera saying she supports a mandatory gun buyback program." When this woman gets up in front of a camera, she is a skilled, smooth talking snake. It reminds me a lot of Barack Obama, and Barack Obama with his hope and change. And now you got, Kamala Harris, or they're all, joy and vibey and all that stuff. At some point, the joy and the vibes are going to run out, and we're going to be left with inflation and open borders and World War III. But okay, hope and change, and let's get some vibey joy going on. That's all the Democrats have. And it's really a shame. The last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to the debate is the issue, again, I want to leave it today with the issue of abortion and Kamala Harris's, one of her parting comments about how amazing she thinks she is. And the only thing I want to say about abortion is that all of the comments were focused on the emotional distress of the mother. Kamala Harris made blatantly false innuendo about how we would prosecute women that were in the middle of miscarriage. No one has said that. That is the most ridiculous thing on the face of the earth. No one's going to prosecute a mother who's in the middle of a tubal pregnancy. It's ridiculous. It's fear-mongering. It isn't true. She said that Donald Trump was going to monitor pregnant women. This is so much fear-mongering. It's ridiculous. But you saw Kamala Harris very, very emotional because she emotionally is so in for abortion for any reason up to the moment of birth. And when she says that she isn't, all you have to do is go back and look at her record on abortion. This woman is about as radical on the issue of abortion as any presidential candidate has ever been in the history of the United States. And I thought it was very telling that no one, not Trump, not Kamala, not the Kamala surrogates, which were David Muir and Lindsay Davis, no one talked about the baby. It was all about emotion and the emotional distress of the mother and the possibility that there could be a baby resulting from incest or rape of a 13-year-old girl and how terrible that would be. And then Kamala looked at Trump and tried to scold him. Nobody wants that, Trump. No one wants it. Don't you understand? It's so bad. No one talked about the dismemberment of babies in the womb. No one talked about injecting the poison digoxin into the heart of a little tiny human being and stopping that heart. No one talked about a saline abortion where you murder the baby through burning it to death inside of its mother's womb. No one talked about the baby. It was all about emotion, and it was all about the rights of a person who's already been born. Shame on ABC News for that. It was softball question after softball question. It was a disgusting display of the modern journalistic lack of integrity that we're all kind of living through right now. And I think this is the reason why people are so frustrated in politics. This is why people don't want to engage. And I thought it was interesting that Kamala Harris, in her closing statement, talked about how amazing she was as a prosecutor. And when she was in a court of law, she said, I didn't ask if people were Democrats or Republicans. Now this is kind of her sing-song, less of the cackle and more of the, I love you guys. I love you. I want what's best for you. And when I was working in a court of law, I never asked, are you a Democrat or are you a Republican? I just asked the victim, are you okay? Are you okay? Well, here, Kamala, guess what? We're not okay. We're not okay. We're not okay with your open border policy. We're not okay with your radical leftist ideas about abortion. We're not okay with high inflation. We're not okay with your worship of the climate. We're not okay with what's happening in our education system. We're not okay with the invasion of illegals into our country. We're not okay with Venezuelan gangs taking over buildings in Aurora, California. We're not okay with any of it. And we're not okay with you. And I, for one, am done with the theatrical politics that we saw play out last night for all the world to watch. We are the laughing stock of the world. People will say, well, Donald Trump didn't do very good last night. And I would agree. I didn't think that was his best night ever. But I think the reason he didn't do good is because he just doesn't play the game. And that's why we love him. That's why we want him back in the White House, because he doesn't play the game. These people can say whatever they want through a forked tongue, and you know they're lying to you. And Donald Trump may not talk as smoothly, and sometimes he stumbles around, and sometimes he rambles. I mean, absolutely, he rambles a lot. But you know, one thing's for certain, and I met with him in private 2 years ago, and I met with him for about an hour by myself, and I can tell you right now that man loves this country. He genuinely loves the country. And what happened to him last night in a 3-on-1 debate was just a disgrace. It was disgusting. I think that the press is corrupt in this country, and I think you're going to see more of. I hope and I pray and I think that it will actually probably backfire on them in the days to come, because I think people could see it right away. Oh, hey, this is a setup. Oh, hey, this is an ambush. And for the American people to have to go through this again and risk putting our country on a life raft and just floating over Niagara Falls again with the Democrats at the helm is a terrifying proposition, but it's one we're going to have to start thinking about, because it certainly looks to me like that is what these pro-abortion advocates are hoping to get. And maybe they'll get it. Maybe they will. We took a lot of notes tonight. I'm kind of looking through my notes, and as I said, the most amazing thing to me was not about the debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. It was the interference and the obvious bias of the so-called moderators. We've seen this happen before, but I think this might have been the worst time that we've ever seen it happen. And it was a mistake. I don't know that Donald Trump's going to step into that again because it's so rigged. It's ridiculous. We have a nation in decline. Trump said it over and over and over again. Our nation is in trouble. It is being destroyed by leftist policies. It is being destroyed by people who care more about power and influence than they do about ordinary people. And Robert F. Kennedy is absolutely right. And it's sad in a lot of ways because this isn't the party of Reagan anymore. It's more like the party of JFK, where it used to be that the Democrats saw themselves as sort of the party of the working class, the anti-war party. And really now the Republicans have replaced that. But what we've lost in all of that is we've lost a true conservative voice. And it's going to take us a long time to get it back. And I hope that those of you who are listening, I know a lot of you guys were frustrated. And there was another thing, and I wish I could find a clip, and maybe I'll have it for you at some point later in the week. But they talked to Donald Trump about the loss of the election. And again, David Muir chastised him and tried to trick him and trip him up and make him angry. And I was actually pretty impressed with the restraint that Donald Trump was showing in the face of all this, because surely he knew that it was 3-on-1. He had to know that it was an ambush. But when they panned over to Kamala Harris, and Trump, of course, shot back and said, no, I don't think that the election was legitimate. I think that there's a massive fraud in the election system in our country, and I would agree with him. And when they pan over to Kamala Harris, when she gets to reply, she made it emotional again, and she just said, oh, Trump is having a hard time processing his loss. It was so condescending and so rude. And it was, anyway, it was hard not to be demoralized watching it. But I want to end on a little bit of encouragement, because I said, stick around. I think you're going to be encouraged. And this is why I think we can be encouraged. No matter what happened on the debate stage, no matter what happens, honestly, in November, we're going to do everything we can, from my end at least, to get people out to vote, to talk about things that really matter, to highlight policy, because it will always be an issue of policy. Politics determines policy, and policy shapes the nation. But the Bible says, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. And that is what we want to keep in front of us going forward. We want to be men and women who follow Jesus, who live out a kingdom culture and influence everything around us for righteousness, for his name's sake. When we act like Christians, when we engage the world from a Christian perspective, we get involved in politics, we get involved in helping the poor and the needy, we get involved in the fight for life, we get involved in our education system. When we get involved, then we are actually being the men and women that God calls us to be. And at the end of the day, because I don't know about you guys, but I've already read to the end of the book. I already know how this thing pans out. I know that one of these days, every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. And it's late here tonight in the Pacific Northwest as I'm recording this. And I am going to go to bed tonight with joy in my heart, because I know that one day the Lord of Heaven's armies is going to set things straight. And in the meantime, we have a role to play, a job to do, hope to dispense, a gospel to share. And we have the opportunity to be the hands and feet of Jesus Christ to a world that desperately needs the hope of the gospel. The psalmist said some might trust in horses and some might trust in chariots. Let me put it to you a different way. Some might trust in politics. Some might trust in a debate. Some might trust in homeschooling. Some might trust in the ACT or the SAT, but we don't, the children of God. We trust in the name of the Lord. Does that mean that we disengage? Absolutely not. We know that we're sinners saved by grace. But like the Apostle Paul said, because you've been saved by grace and now your sin has been forgiven, is that an excuse to sin? No. It cheapens the grace that you've been given. Don't cheapen the freedom that you've been given by refusing to engage in the process. Engage, 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 and then leave the results up to God and sleep in peace. This has been a special episode of the Heidi St. John podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. A special thank you to my sponsor. Thanks a lot to Tuvu, the social media company that actually cares about you guys. They're not going to sell your information, and you're not going to get sucked into algorithms. You're going to see what you want to see, and you're not going to see what you don't want to see. Check it out at tuvu.com. The first 500 people to sign up there are going to get 6 months for free. That's tuvu.com/Heidi. Be sure and follow me when you get there. You guys, don't be discouraged. Continue to do the work. Continue to get people to register to vote. Continue to talk to your pastor about why we need to be talking about these things from the pulpit. And continue to pray. There is power in prayer. The Bible says that the prayers of a righteous man are both powerful and effective. Thank you guys for tuning in today, and I'll see you right back here again at the intersection of faith